I remember the first time I saw him. Nolan Drew. Everyone did. He wasn't just a name, he was the name. The guy who pulled off the crazy pranks online, the one whose face lit up a million screens. His stupid smirk was everywhere. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. Not until it was too late. Back then, I was working at Bramble, a trendy little spot in the city. You know, the kind of place where influencers came to take photos of their food and bartenders mixed overpriced cocktails. It was decent, though. I was a waiter, trying to save up for my own small bar, hustling through double shifts while pretending to care about whether someone's steak was rare enough. The night Nolan came in, he was surrounded by cameras. His people were filming, laughing too loud. They ordered bottles of expensive champagne, plates of oysters they barely touched. I didn't think much of it at first. Just another night, another group of social media brats trying to look important. Then he called me over, grinning wide. "Hey man, can we get a refill here?" he said, pointing to the almost full bottle. I nodded. Sure thing. As I leaned to pick up the bottle, I heard a faint click. I looked up. One of his friends had their phone out, filming. I hesitated, my gut twisting. Nolan grabbed the bottle from my hand and splashed it all over his shirt, laughing. "Bro, what the hell? This guy just soaked me." I froze. It was too fast. He staggered back, pretending to slip. Cameras flashed. His friends burst out laughing, pretending to gasp. "Dude, what the hell is wrong with you?" someone shouted. Before I could even explain, Nolan was shouting about how I'd ruined his expensive clothes, how unprofessional I was. I tried to talk, but they were already uploading. Live streaming. The manager rushed over, red-faced. "Eli, get to the back, now!" I was fired on the spot. No investigation, no second chances. Nolan's video went viral by morning. Waiter destroys influencers, $5,000, 0 cents. Suit. They framed it as me being drunk, aggressive, unstable. Comments poured in calling me a loser, a psycho, memes. Even my own friends started pulling away. I couldn't find work after that. Word spread, and every job interview felt like a dead end. I lost my apartment, ended up sleeping on a friend's couch, then in my car. Nolan's career soared higher. He milked the story, laughing in interviews about the crazy waiter who tried to ruin him. For years, I lived in the shadow of that one moment. Every time I tried to move on, the video haunted me. People recognized me. They whispered, they pointed. But while I drifted between shelters and odd jobs, I kept watching Nolan. I tracked his rise, his tours, his collaborations. I studied his habits, his weaknesses. I let my anger simmer until it was the only thing keeping me alive. Then, after 3 years of crawling through the muck, I got my shot. Nolan was coming to a private event in my city, a massive party at an abandoned warehouse, rebranded as an exclusive, underground experience for influencers and celebrities. I knew a guy on the setup crew, someone desperate enough for cash to slip me the floor plans, the guest list, everything. I wasn't going to kill Nolan. That would be too easy, too merciful. No, I was going to make him the story. I spent weeks planning it out. Every detail had to be perfect. I got a job with the event staff under a fake name, working nights to avoid attention. I mapped out the exits, the cameras, the routes. I knew where Nolan would be, what his handlers would be doing, when the security would look the other way. I even found the perfect prop. A rigged champagne bottle, identical to the one he had humiliated me with. But this one wasn't filled with alcohol. It was filled with a thick, reeking mixture of fish guts, spoiled milk, and raw sewage. Enough to make anyone gag. The night of the party, the warehouse was packed. Flashing lights, booming music, half-naked bodies grinding in the shadows. I slipped into my role, dressed in the uniform of the staff, my face hidden under a cap. Nolan arrived late, surrounded by cameras as always. He was drunk, laughing loudly, grabbing at the arms of his handlers. His fans screamed his name, desperate for a glimpse. I followed him, keeping my distance, waiting for the right moment. When it came, it was perfect. He was standing on a raised platform, waving to the crowd. His glass was empty. I stepped up, holding the rigged bottle. "Sir, would you like a refill?" I asked, my voice steady. He didn't even look at me. Yeah, top me off." I pulled the trigger on the bottle. The disgusting slurry sprayed all over him, drenching his designer clothes, splattering his hair, his face. He gasped, choking on the stench, slipping on the mess. His friends recoiled in horror. Cameras flashed, capturing every second. I leaned in close, my voice low enough that only he could hear. "Now you know what it feels like, Nolan." Security rushed in, but by then the crowd was laughing, jeering. Nolan stumbled, humiliated, slipping in the mess. The video went viral within hours. Influencer covered in mystery sludge at party. But this was only the beginning. I had something bigger planned, something final. The video of Nolan, soaked in filth and flailing in front of his fans, burned through the internet like wildfire. Every major platform had it plastered on their front pages. Memes popped up faster than anyone could keep track. "From king to clown," one headline sneered. But this wasn't enough for me. It was just a taste. The appetizer before the main course. I knew how this worked. A guy like Nolan could brush off a public humiliation. He'd spin it into a joke, make a redemption arc video, come back stronger with more sponsors. He'd make a video about learning from mistakes or embracing vulnerability. He wouldn't just survive it, he'd monetize it. But I couldn't let that happen. After the party, I disappeared into the city's underbelly. My fake name and fake credentials were already burned. I needed a new approach, something deeper. I spent weeks lurking on forums, reading everything about Nolan, his habits, his home, his circle of friends. I learned about his new mansion in the hills, a fortress of glass and steel with security cameras everywhere. I found his private studio where he filmed his content, where the pristine white walls and LED lights turned his pranks into viral gold. And I found something better. Nolan was planning a live stunt, his next big move. A charity livestream from his studio, pulling an elaborate prank where he'd invite a random fan to come on camera and get surprised with a fake celebrity visit. His team was hyping it up as the event that would rebuild his image after the warehouse fiasco. It was going to be his triumphant return. I made sure I was that random fan. Getting picked wasn't as hard as you'd think. His team was disorganized, desperate to recover from the last disaster. I used a fake account, sent in videos, made a sob story about how much I admired him, how I was his biggest supporter. I was polite, enthusiastic, eager. They bought it. The day of the live stream arrived. I showed up at his studio, dressed in the clothes they sent me, branded gear, a forced smile. Nolan greeted me with his fake charm, slapping my back, winking at the camera. "This is Eli, one of our biggest fans. We're about to make his day." The studio was sterile, bright with harsh lights. Nolan's crew was everywhere, setting up cameras, checking sound levels. They thought they were in control. They had no idea. While they were distracted, I slipped into a back corridor using the access codes I'd bribed from a low-level tech. I found the control room, a cramped space filled with monitors and switches. I locked the door behind me. From there, I hijacked the feed. The cameras in the studio still showed Nolan grinning for his audience, but now I controlled what the viewers saw. I cut the audio. I switched the angle. I put up a pre-recorded message I'd made earlier, showing a montage of Nolan's past pranks, the lies, the cruelty, the smug face that had haunted me for years. And then I made the feed go black. Panic broke out in the studio. Nolan shouted, waving at his crew, "What the hell's going on?" I stepped back into the room. I wasn't smiling anymore. I was holding something small and metal in my hand. "Surprise, Nolan," I said quietly. He froze. "Eli, what the hell?" I didn't give him time to finish. I pressed the button on the device. The studio lights flickered, the emergency locks on the doors clicked shut. The crew was trapped inside with us. They banged on the walls, trying to override the system, but it was too late. The room filled with a dense, choking gas. Not enough to kill, but enough to make them gag, to leave them clawing at their throats. I had studied the mix carefully, made sure it would incapacitate but not leave permanent damage. Except for Nolan. I pulled a mask over my face and walked straight up to him as he coughed and staggered. "You humiliated me, you ruined me, now it's your turn," I said, my voice sharp, cold. He tried to grab me, but he was too weak. I shoved him back into the chair they had set up for the live stream. The cameras switched back on, but now the feed was mine. I forced them to broadcast Nolan, pale and gasping, locked in a sealed room. On screen, I held up a printed copy of the viral video he'd made of me 3 years ago. "This is the man who ruined my life for views," I said, voice clear over the feed. "Now the world gets to see who he really is." I left the feed running, looping the footage of Nolan struggling, his crew pounding on the doors, his face streaked with panic. I made sure the audio captured his coughing, his desperate pleas. When the emergency responders finally forced their way in, the cameras caught everything. Nolan collapsed on the floor, surrounded by his helpless team. The footage went viral faster than his first scandal. But it wasn't over. No, this was just the middle of the story. I had something else planned, something Nolan would never walk away from. Nolan survived the studio incident, but just barely. The gas had left him weak, coughing up black phlegm, his face pale under the studio's relentless lighting. His handlers whisked him away, tried to control the damage, but it was impossible. The live stream had shown everything, him choking, pleading, clawing at the sealed doors. The footage was too raw, too real. His sponsors pulled out within hours. Fans turned on him, memes turned dark. I wasn't done. Nolan hid for weeks after that. His social media went dark. His usual cocky grin vanished. The news was all over it. Prank king silenced. Is this the end for Nolan Drew? He issued a brief apology video, mumbling through forced words about how he was working on himself, but everyone could see the cracks. I let him sit in that silence, let him stew in the isolation. But while he was licking his wounds, I was preparing the final act. I followed the threads I'd uncovered during my planning. The hidden connections he thought no one knew about. The shell companies he used to hide his money. The offshore accounts. The slimy deals with advertising agencies. It was all there, buried under layers of fake paperwork and dummy names. But I dug deeper. I found his real secret. Nolan had built his empire on lies. Not just viral pranks. He had staged fake giveaways, rigged charity auctions, even skimmed money from fundraisers he claimed to support, all while smiling into the camera, playing the role of the lovable rogue. I compiled everything, every fraudulent deal, every doctored receipt, every false claim. I gathered it into a file thicker than any legal brief, and then I waited for the right moment. That moment came when Nolan tried to stage his comeback. He announced a new live stream, the return of Nolan Drew, a desperate attempt to claw his way back into relevance. The promotion was aggressive, with ads plastered all over the internet. I was ready. The night of his grand return, I slipped into his new mansion, a glass and steel monstrosity perched above the city like a spider's lair. The security was high, but I'd mapped it out. His guards were lax, overconfident, expecting no real threat. I slipped past them, silent in the shadows. Inside, I found Nolan in his studio, preparing to go live. He was alone, muttering to himself, pacing like a trapped animal. I stepped out of the darkness, calm, collected. He froze. "You, how the hell did you get in here?" I didn't answer. I simply held up the thick folder of evidence. "This is everything you've done, Nolan. Every lie, every scam, every stolen dollar," I said, voice low and steady. "You can't talk your way out of this." He lunged at me, wild, but I sidestepped, letting him crash into a table. He gasped, panting, staring at me with something that almost looked like fear. "I'm going to send this to everyone, every sponsor, every news outlet, every legal authority," I continued. "You'll be ruined, not by rumors, not by gossip, but by the truth." He collapsed into a chair, shaking. "Please, don't." I'll pay you. I'll make it right. Just don't. I cut him off with a sharp gesture. You think this is about money? About making it right? You think you can buy your way out of this like you've always done? I leaned in closer, my voice cold. I'm not going to kill you, Nolan. That would be too easy. Too quick. I'm going to make you watch everything crumble around you. I'm going to make sure you feel every second of your fall. I activated my phone, sending the evidence files to every major outlet, every contact I'd prepared. The messages went out in a flurry, the weight of Nolan's secrets exploding across the digital world. Within minutes, his phone buzzed with notifications, growing louder, more frantic. His face paled. His lips trembled. I turned to leave. This is the end, Nolan. Enjoy your last show. As I slipped out of the mansion, I heard him screaming, the sound raw, animalistic. The first reports were already hitting the news. Nolan Drew, fraudster, thief, liar. His empire collapsed in real time, like a tower of glass shattering under its own weight. But I wasn't done. Not yet. Nolan's life fell apart faster than I'd imagined. By the end of the week, his sponsors had abandoned him, his legal team was scrambling, and the media had turned from fawning admiration to vicious, relentless takedown pieces. Every detail of his scam surfaced. Fake contests, rigged fundraisers, the shell companies siphoning money into his own accounts. His name became poison. But even then, he tried to salvage something. He went dark on social media for a few days, then reappeared with a shaky video, filmed in what looked like a hastily cleaned-out guest room. He looked pale, thinner, the usual bravado stripped from his voice. He spoke about his mistakes, called himself flawed but learning, asked for forgiveness. I watched that video alone in a cheap motel room with peeling wallpaper and the sour stink of mildew. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the screen, feeling a hollow ache in my chest. This wasn't enough. Not yet. Because he still existed. I could tell from his eyes, even in that pathetic video, that he wasn't truly sorry. He was planning something, waiting for the public's short attention span to turn. He thought he could outlast the outrage, reinvent himself, return in a new form. He didn't understand that some things couldn't be outlived. I knew where he was hiding. One of his old assistants, a kid he'd treated like trash, had told me for a price. Nolan had holed up in a rented house on the edge of the city, far from the glass and steel monstrosity he used to flaunt. The place was quiet, remote, no security cameras, no guards. He was alone. I waited until the middle of the night. The sky was overcast, the air thick with the promise of rain. I parked a few blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, feeling the cold settle into my bones. My hands were steady, my mind was clear. The door wasn't even locked. Inside, the house was dark, filled with the stale smell of sweat and fear. I found Nolan in the living room, sprawled on a couch, surrounded by empty bottles and the flicker of a muted television. His face was gaunt, his eyes red and glassy. He looked up when I stepped into the light, his mouth opening in a soundless gasp. "You?" he whispered. I stood there for a moment, letting the silence stretch between us. "You thought you could hide," I said softly. "Thought you could wait it out." He tried to sit up, but his body was too heavy with exhaustion, alcohol, maybe drugs. "Please, man, just leave me alone. I've lost everything. Isn't that enough?" I stepped closer, crouching down so we were eye to eye. "No," I said. "You humiliated me, destroyed my life, laughed while I sank into nothing. You made me a joke to the world, and now you're sitting here, feeling sorry for yourself, waiting for it to pass. But it won't. It's time for you to feel what it's like to be truly helpless." His eyes widened, fear replacing the thin shell of bravado. "Don't, please. I'll do anything, just—" I didn't let him finish. I pulled a syringe from my pocket, filled with a clear, fast-acting sedative. Before he could react, I jabbed it into his neck. He jerked, eyes rolling back, then slumped forward. Still breathing, still conscious, but barely. I tied his hands behind his back, dragged him outside into the cold night. The rain started then, a light drizzle that soaked us both. I bundled him into the trunk of a borrowed car, slammed it shut, and drove. The destination was an abandoned industrial site on the outskirts of the city. Rusted beams jutted out like broken bones, concrete walls stained with graffiti and mold. The perfect stage for the final act. I dragged him out, propping him against a crumbling pillar. The sedative was wearing off enough that he could lift his head, his gaze unfocused but terrified. "Welcome to your last show, Nolan," I said, my voice low and steady. I set up a camera on a tripod, aimed it directly at him. A light attached to the rig illuminated his pale, soaked face. I connected the feed to a burner account I'd set up, broadcasting it live to every platform that had ever made him famous. He croaked something, a plea lost in the rain. "This is Nolan Drew," I said into the camera, my tone clinical. "The man who built a fortune on cruelty, lies, and stolen lives. Tonight, he's going viral for the last time." I stepped back, leaving him tied and shivering in the rain, the camera catching every second. The comments flooded in, at first shocked, then vicious, laughing, jeering. His fans and haters alike devoured the feed, unable to look away. And then I lit the match. Not a literal match, just a simple ignition switch connected to the old rusted gas line I'd rigged earlier. The line ran under the concrete floor, leaking slowly for hours. The explosion was quick, a sharp flash of light and a rolling wave of heat that shattered the crumbling walls. I was already gone, a shadow slipping into the rain, my tracks washed clean by the storm. The news hit by morning. "Nolan Drew dies in tragic accident," the headlines read at first, but within hours the truth emerged. The feed had been live, the evidence undeniable. There was no comeback this time, no redemption arc, no surviving it. He had gone viral for the last time, his face frozen in terror, his empire crumbling into ash. He disappeared after that, slipping into the nameless cracks of the world, leaving behind only whispers of a man who had once been humiliated by a viral prankster. A man who had taken everything back, piece by piece. And in the silence that followed, for the first time in years, I felt something close to peace.